Hello, everybody. As you're all joining, I know lots of you are joining this breaking news town hall. Welcome to our Zeteo Sunday night town hall. It's not something we do very often, but you know what? History is made on weekends these days. Last weekend, a former president, was almost assassinated. And this weekend, the first president since LBJ in 1968 decided not to run for re-election. Joe Biden ended his campaign, and we thought, let's get together with people who know some stuff about this stuff and asked them what the hell is going to happen next. With me now, we've got Nina Turner, former co-chair of the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign, founder of We Are Somebody, former Ohio State Senator. We've got Waleed Shahid, former advisor to AOC, former spokesperson for Justice Democrats, now an advisor to the Uncommitted movement that's made a lot of noise about Gaza in this Democratic primary season. We're also hoping, fingers crossed, that Joan Walsh, national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine, who spent several months with Kamala Harris this year, writing a big profile on her, great timing, will join us in a moment. She's having some Zoom issues, as you do. Wow, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of you on this call. So everyone is talking about this story of the day. I'm just going to jump straight into it. Nina, Waleed, did you expect this today? What was your Insta response, Nina?
I did. I mean, I had an inside source that said it was going to happen this weekend. I know anything could have changed that, but given how many Democrats within the bubble came out and asked the president to step out of the race, Senator Sherrod Brown from my home state was one of the latest to come out to say that Ohioans are saying they want him out. I knew it was going to be a matter of time. The diagnosis of COVID time with this, it just seemed as though the handwriting was on the wall.
Before I bring in Waleed, Joan Walsh has joined us. Joan, thank you so much. You got past the Zoom gremlins and got in here. I'm going to bring in Joan straight away in my excitement. Waleed's going to wait a little longer. Say, what was your Insta response?
Sorry, Waleed.
Did you think it was going to happen? Were you surprised it happened today? What was your instant response to the Biden?
I was surprised it happened today, actually, Mehdi, but I knew it was, I mean, I didn't know because I had sources, because I don't have sources in the Biden camp, but I kind of knew it was going to happen. I just thought it might take longer because he has COVID still. And, there were just other things. People were saying he didn't want to do it before Netanyahu comes. Yeah. And we can talk about Gaza later, because I think Kamala Harris has a better general orientation toward that war. But so I was actually totally shocked today. And it was my day off, allegedly. And other people can relate. But I pretty much knew, not from sourcing, but just from observing, it had to happen. And I just think he is really a master for the way that he handled endorsing Kamala Harris, because everybody freaked out that he didn't. And it was only like, I don't know,
like 25 minutes. It was 25 minutes between the letter
25 minutes.
I counted. I went back and I was like, what did I miss?
So I should have done that because I wrote about it. But it was like, I was kind of like, texting friends. Oh, shoot. He's not doing this. And then he did it. And I just want to say that gives me a lot of, respect for Joe Biden, because that's a master of drama. And she got her own headline. And she also got the headline after people were like, oh, he didn't endorse her, and now he's not going to, and all this BS. So I was pretty excited today. I have not been excited throughout this whole campaign.
It's very funny you say excited. I don't think I was excited, but I felt semi-optimistic for the first time in
okay, that's good.
I think that's how I felt today. On the drama front, by the way, I am still slightly annoyed that if he was going to pull out, why didn't he do it at 10:29 p.m. on Thursday night and totally screw over Donald Trump's speech? That's my own view. That would have been a great moment. Donald Trump would have died.
Likewise, and I canceled plans for the week because I thought he was going to do it on Friday. But who cares?
There you go. Waleed, what was your response?
I'll be the one who was surprised. I didn't think it was going to happen this weekend. I was 50-50 that it was going to happen at all because of how defiant he was and how defiant his campaign was. I mean, I also follow the statements and tweets of the senior campaign staff, the senior White House staff, and up until Morning Joe on Friday morning, the campaign was incredibly defiant about how he was going to stay in the race.
Right.
And I kept hearing that there was no way he was going to make this decision before Netanyahu's address because he didn't want to give Netanyahu the satisfaction of, knowing that Biden was out. But yeah, I mean, when I first saw this statement, it was read to me, and I was like, that statement doesn't say anything about who the successor is. And so I'm like, wow, it's very controversial to not go with your presidential pick. So I was also glad that he did it eventually, within a few minutes of me being read that statement, I was read another statement that he did endorse her. And so
I like the
yeah, I don't
drama.
know.
I was with a group of friends, what we call normies, who don't follow politics closely, and their instant response was, "Oh, he endorsed it. Maybe he just forgot before. He's Joe Biden." Obvious gag for poor old Joe.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. Nina, by the way, let's say we've got hundreds and hundreds of people in the chat right now. Please do stick your questions in the chat. I will ask them to our three expert guests. I'll try and get through as many as we can. Before I get to all the questions in the chat, Nina, I've got to say one thing to you. You and I have been saying similar things about this stuff for the last few weeks. I came out and said in The Guardian a couple of weeks ago and said, it's got to be Kamala Harris. Get on with it, Joe. Step aside. It's an obvious move. I've not been a Kamala Harris fan all my life, that's for sure. But she was the obvious choice. And it was almost anyone better than Biden at that point after the debate. And so many people, so many Biden supporters, Nina, were saying, well, this is racism. People want to push out Joe Biden and then overlook Kamala Harris. That's been proved wrong today. The white leaders of the Democratic Party, Joe Biden, multiple senators in the Senate, have all come out and said, we want Kamala Harris, we endorse Kamala. Within hours, it's actually been pretty unifying and disciplined. The only major Democrat, apart from Nancy Pelosi, who I see who hasn't come out for Kamala Harris in a specific statement, was ironically Barack Obama.
Yeah, that is the irony. As far as the president is concerned, I mean, he had to do this. There was no ands, ifs, or buts about it if he wanted to preserve his legacy. We know that we have a broad coalition, or the Democratic Party has a broad coalition, but the loyalist base of that coalition are Black people, period, Black women and Black men, even though Black women get more credit than Black men, which I still shake my head at that because they don't vote necessarily at totally different rates. However, Black women, lead that coalition, and there was no doubt in my mind that if he stepped out, he had to. Mehdi, you and I did similar op-eds. Mine was in Newsweek, and not that I believe that the vice president is a flaming progressive, because she is not. She is a moderate. She is a neoliberal. Now, when she was running for president in 2020, she said some things. I mean, we know that she signed on for Medicare for all. We know that she said that she would use the filibuster to expand, to support the Green New Deal. We're going to go back and pull out some of that stuff. I think progressives have to come out and pull out some of that stuff. But the president, for his legacy, had to do that. And as for the other white Democrats of note, and when I say of note, I mean of special titles, if they hope to have the apparatus of the Democratic Party behind them, beside them, in front of them, around them, they have to go with what the president has done. If they buck it, they will be punished. So I want all of our listeners and fans and frenemies to know that they will be punished. That is one of the reasons why people did not get into a robust primary, which people like me and others, Mehdi and Joan and Waleed, some people who were calling for robust primaries were said to have been trying to trumpet Trump, excuse the pun. And now all of a sudden, you got the neoliberals pushing out the current president. Now he has said he's not running again, but mum's the word on them. They're not being accused of trying to push for Trump. The irony, when progressives do it, it's pro-Trump.
We can come back to the squad having fallen in line behind Biden, but now today AOC come out. Kamala Harris very quickly. Joan, you spent a lot of time with Kamala Harris recently writing this big piece for The Nation, which I urge everyone to have a read of. Shaheen Vera in the chat says, is Kamala Harris capable of being president? It's a question a lot of people are asking.
Absolutely. And I really object to this notion that she's being, it's a coronation. I mean, I covered her. I've known her for 21 years, Mehdi. I covered her run for DA, and she was running against a progressive, but he was an incompetent progressive, which we really don't need. And all she wanted to talk to me about was prosecuting people who were committing sex crimes. And she did a lot of that. She did a lot of things that weren't that good. But, I would take issue with my friend Nina. I would say she's a progressive by our current standards. I would say she's more progressive than Joe Biden. I would say, to the extent that he's done good things, she will continue his legacy. And I genuinely have, I've traveled around with her now and watched her be the progressive voice and be the person who is trumpeting his progressive initiatives. So, I'm very high on her, and I really hope she, I hope that Barack Obama gets behind her. I think it's hilarious that the Clintons got behind her, but Barack Obama hasn't. But we can talk about
Indeed.
that.
And
I'm sorry, wait, I gotta jump. Waleed,
go
I'm
on, Nina,
sorry,
briefly,
baby.
then we'll
I gotta
go.
jump in here.
Go on.
Progressivism. So she's the vice president. So let me just say to my friend Joan that in my op-ed, I wrote that the only person, if he got out, has to be the vice president. So let me be clear about that.
I
And
know,
not
I
because,
know,
not,
I know.
not because of policy positions. Now, when somebody is the vice president, they have to do the bidding of the president. So
Exactly.
now that she
Yeah.
is running and will be nominated during the DNC convention, we will see if candidate Harris will return to some of the policies that she championed and pushed as Senator Harris.
So a
But
lot of
make no
questions,
mistake-
Nina. I'm going to jump in. There are a lot of questions about policy. A lot of our subscribers, you'll be shocked to care about Gaza, and they want to know about Gaza. And I want to come to Gaza. Before I do that, let's just get the other big question of the day. Who's going to be her running mate? Waleed, you're the man who's been advising the uncommitted folks. Michael Connors asks, who should Harris choose as her running mate, considering Biden's support for Israel? Perhaps Whitmer to help secure Michigan, which, of course, is a place where a lot of Muslim Americans, Arab Americans have been upset about. Could you see a Gretchen Whitmer all-woman Michigan, California ticket?
I think that would be a very compelling ticket considering how central Roe is to the Democrats' case. I honestly don't see it happening because the party is very risk averse and probably doesn't want to put two women on the ticket. So I think the people I've been hearing is Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania, Governor Cooper in North Carolina, Governor Beshear in Kentucky. On the issue of Gaza, Governor Shapiro has been pretty, just a few weeks ago, he was trying to crack down on BDS speech, boycott, divestment, sanctions against Israel. I don't think if you're trying to win over Muslims and Arabs and young people who care about Gaza, I would not go with Shapiro. But the other two are Cooper and Bashir. They don't have anything distinguishing about them on their policies on Israel. But I imagine that to balance out the fact that she's coded as a San Francisco liberal, that she's a Black woman, that it's likely that they will go with a white moderate man from a purple state or who has experience in the executive office negotiating with Republicans. That's not, obviously my preferred pick, but I'm just describing what I think the strategists around her.
Which is what Obama did with Joe Biden in 2008.
And Roy Cooper, can we throw Roy Cooper from North?
Yes.
Yeah.
Waleed, did you say Cooper? I know. I think the vice president was in North Carolina quite a bit.
Let me ask you this, Joan, as since we're jumping on Michigan, Gaza's everything. Basil Kiwan asks, let's just get straight to the Gaza question. As an Arab American, why should I care about or support Harris? What evidence is there that she is not as implacably hostile to Palestinian humanity as Biden has been?
I will tell you to read my entire profile when it comes out tomorrow, because I think a lot of people, Mehdi, I understand when people criticize rhetoric, but rhetoric is important.
Yes.
The way that you express
Agreed.
passion and you break down what has happened in Gaza, which she has done. And, maybe this sounds trivial, but she said to me, I'm a cook and people keep claiming, oh, we're bringing in a lot of flour. I'm like, flour's not shit without water. And she literally said shit. She also was like, there's no sanitary hygiene for women. And I think, and a lot of people I know believe she's not going to be light years different. She's not going to be what we would be.
Yeah.
But she will be different from Joe Biden in terms of policy if she gets elected. There's no doubt she has much more compassion for the Palestinians, whereas all of his compassion is for the Israelis. It's a generational divide, if nothing more.
It's such a good point you make about rhetoric, because I've been saying this since October. Like, I don't expect Joe Biden to come out for BDS or even an arms embargo. But what I
Oh,
did expect the president of the United States to do is not just erase Palestinian humanity, accuse them of being liars, make up things about babies that didn't
right.
happen. Like that, I think she will be better on. I've spoken to people in the administration who say there's no doubt that she is better rhetorically and humanly, as you point out, on this issue. But let me just, before I go back to Nina, Waleed, from an uncommitted perspective, we have hundreds of thousands of people voting uncommitted over Gaza. What happens to those voters? A lot of them have delegates now who were turning up at the DNC in Chicago. We were expecting protests. What happens to them when Harris maybe strikes a better tone on Gaza, but still carries on selling weapons that are killing kids right now, even as we speak?
I think she's going to face enormous pressure to stay one way or another, whether she aligns fully with the president's views or wants to turn the page toward a new policy on Israel and Palestine. I do think that, like, from what I've heard from anecdotal information that Joan confirmed in her piece, like, people who've been in meetings with her about Gaza have meetings where she is present and President Biden are present. She seems much more physically and mentally disturbed by what's happening in Israel. And so I do think that that's like, there is a difference there. But if I had, $1 for every time a politician has privately expressed their sympathies for Palestinians versus publicly, like I'd be a rich man. And so it does come down to the political balance of forces here in terms of, there's a struggle happening in the Democratic Party over whether it's a party for AIPAC or whether it's a party for people who, believe in the equality of Israelis and Palestinians. And Kamala Harris will have to find her kind of bearings in that approach. But I do think it'll be marginally better. In terms of the voters want to see the bomb stop. And, what will happen as Harris is running to be the presidential candidate while she's still the vice president, overseeing an administration that's supplying weapons to a war that will continue. I do think it deflates some of those protests that are really upset with quote unquote genocide Joe, but the bombs are, one of the saddest things about this whole horse race coverage about Biden is how much Gaza has disappeared from mainstream media coverage. And so people are on it.
On the subject of mainstream media coverage, I'm jumping around because a lot of questions in the chat. I apologize, we're never going to get through. We've got hundreds of questions. Nina, Derek Ishmael asks, how do you expect the legacy media to handle this change? And do you think they'll focus more on Trump's behavior now? Which I think is a very important question. We've seen this obsession, as critical as I am of Biden, the obsession of the media with Biden's age at the expense of Trump's criminality, racism, authoritarianism. Do you expect to see any changes? You do a lot of CNN and MSNBC. What do you think is going to happen in the New York Times?
I don't know, Mehdi. Trump is a magnet though for mainstream media. I mean, he has made them millions of dollars. I've certainly been privy to some of those conversations. It's about the money, follow the money. They're going to continue to talk about President Trump because he drives the news. Now, will they talk about him differently? Will they talk about the vice president and future candidate for president? I'm saying future because we got to get through the DNC process. Will they talk about her at the same rate? One would hope, because earned media is a thing. I mean, it is a very important thing, and politicians need that. Now, the vice president has what no other candidate would have had. She has the benefit of having been on the ballot with the current president in all 50 states. I won't necessarily say she's totally a household name, but it won't be very long before she is. So it is my hope that the mainstream media will do more than talk about Trump 24/7, that they will talk about the vice president and they will talk about the things that really everyday Americans are concerned about. Let's get to that. And Gaza certainly is one of those things. The economy is one of those things.
Joan, a lot of questions about what happens next in terms of any speed bumps. And Najia Khan asks, what's the process now? Could other politicians put their name in the ring? CNN's Jake Tapper is talking about Joe Manchin re-registering as a Democrat and challenging, which sounds insane to me, but I wouldn't put anything past 2024. And Rob Curtis says, what about the GOP's plans to legally challenge ballot changes in swing states, Joan?
The rules are very complicated, Mehdi, and I don't set myself up as somebody who knows the rules, but I think assuming that the leadership of the DNC accepts that she is the legit nominee endorsed by the president, she will handle the rules. And I I don't think that the Supreme Court is going to come into play. And I think that Joe Manchin is the most irrelevant man in politics, which is why he is doing this.
Yes.
So I'm not worried about either of those things. I am worried about her being held accountable. You know, among all of us, I am the only one who I was 9 years old, but I still remembers Hubert Humphrey being held accountable for Lyndon Johnson's horrible Vietnam policy. So she's got a tough road ahead in terms of Gaza because she can't really separate herself from the president more than she already has and more than tone, etc. But I do think people are more willing to give her grace than they were.
Can I ask you a question here? Like, I feel like if I'm like a mainstream media centrist pundit, I would try to get Kamala and be like, what's one position you disagree with the president on? And she would have to answer that question because I feel like making her like
I miss
positioning her as Biden's kind of lackey, I think would be something that people would do.
I mean, I wasn't alive in 1968. I'm happy to say.
Yeah.
That was the dynamic that I've read.
You're happy to say? Come on.
Between Humphrey and LBJ in 68 there was a debate about should Humphrey have distanced himself from Vietnam sooner than he did. He waited until, I think, October to give the famous speech where he distanced him. He called him beforehand and said, I'm going to give the speech, told Johnson. Johnson wasn't happy about it. Can Kamala do something similar? Before we run out of time, Lovely Pariah, Waleed, I've got to go back to the questions. Waleed, Lovely Pariah, great name, asks, what is up with progressive politicians, AOC, Bernie, and their backing of Biden till the very end? Waleed, what was going on there?
Well, I'm curious what Senator Turner thinks of this question too, but
I'm coming to Nina next, don't worry.
I'm referring to you guys.
My understanding is that people like Bernie Sanders and some of the figures in the squad, they believe they've built a lot of trust with President Biden and that he's followed through on especially on economic agenda. And they don't want to throw that away for someone who's an unknown quantity. I don't think they have the relationships with Vice President Harris. And they honestly, genuinely feel that President Biden could make the election made the election a referendum about Biden's economic policy and Build Back Better and the IRA. And I don't think there was anything cynical about it. I think they had a genuine conviction that Biden's election could have been a referendum on progressive economic policy and taking on corporate greed and working with the UAW, and that's what they had in mind. I disagree with that position, which is I don't think Biden is able to prosecute or wasn't able to make the election on a referendum on anything except himself and his age and his gaffes. And so even if we think Biden had a progressive economic record, the election was never going to be defined by that, given how many gaffes he was giving. But I think that was Senator Bernie Sanders, AOC, some of the other members of the squad. I think they felt that Biden had listened to them and brought them into the administration. If you're Bernie Sanders, you've never been that close to the White House in your entire career. And I think, I don't know, you're afraid of giving that up, but I'm curious what other people think.
Nina, do you agree with that?
Well, Waleed made some very strong points. I disagree with the squad and I disagree with Senator Sanders. It's called leverage. So not to say that they should not. Now, I personally would not have, but not to say they should not have, but use your leverage. Like, what are you getting for the endorsement? So if we put aside what now is the reality that President Biden is out and just pretend for a second he is not out, what is the leverage? Part of that leverage could have been not a hair on the head of a squad member is touched. Hello, Congressman Jamal Bowman. Mr. President, we need you to pick up the phone, call your folks, who you got a whole lot of money from, AIPAC, and tell them not a hair on this man's head will be touched. Nothing will happen to Congresswoman Cori Bush, et cetera, et cetera. My indictment of the squad and the Congressional Progressive Caucus is that they don't leverage. You got a Freedom Caucus that got 6.5 people, and I'm exaggerating, but they got a few more than that. But they're able to leverage and get exactly what they want, even though mainly what they want is bad for the American people. But then we have a Congressional Progressive Caucus that is more happy to count, oh, we got 100 members versus using it as leverage. So if I were advising the squad members and also my beloved senator, it would be, I'm not saying that you should not endorse this man, but what leverage are you going to use and what materially are you going to get? I mean, Mehdi, in the first 2 years of the Biden administration, when Democrats had control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, no minimum wage increase, no John Lewis Voting Rights Act, no George Floyd, et cetera, et cetera. We can go on and on and on. However, it doesn't matter. Don't blame it on cinema. Don't blame it on Manchin. Carry a big stick. Lyndon Baines Johnson got through civil rights, voting rights with flaming segregationalists right there in his face. All I'm saying is use the power.
On that note, Joan, filibuster was a problem, obviously, which Sinema and Manchin abused. Joe Biden didn't come out for filibuster reform. Where do we think Kamala Harris will come out on some of these, I call them fighting issues? Not about
I believe she did. I could be wrong, Mehdi, but I believe she did. And Biden did in a really tepid way. But I just don't think anybody can blame them for Manchin and Sinema. But now we're free of them. So we will see what happens.
Well, let's see if the Dems can hold the Senate now with this newfound energy. If they don't hold the Senate, it's all a redundant debate. And by the way, I suspect if the Republicans take the Senate, they will get rid of the filibuster pronto.
Absolutely. We always knew that.
We always knew that. By the way, just running through here, people are suggesting, sorry, I'm not going to say everyone's names, but we've got Pete Buttigieg for VP. We've got Jamie Raskin for VP. We've got people suggesting different names. Someone suggested Tim Kaine. I think not. We keep going through the list. I do want to throw this question about Joan to you about somebody. I've lost the name now, so there's so many questions here. What somebody's asked, and I can't remember who. Apologies. How has Kamala Harris changed since 2020 when she had this disastrous presidential campaign for the Democratic nomination? How do you think she's changed?
I think she has a much better staff and a much more loyal staff, and I know that might sound really bureaucratic or cynical to other people, but I think it really matters. And I think that she has finally, I think that, I saw her. And so I did this profile of her and I was warned not to say this to her, but I did anyway. I saw her the night after the Dobbs decision was leaked and we all knew it was true. And she just went into her own space on abortion and also reproductive justice, which is a different thing in some ways. So I think she's found a whole different way to run. And she's also, she's in charge of running on the good things that the Biden administration did do for Black people and also working class people. And she's been out there in a whole different way. And I feel like I was told not to say this, but she's found her voice. She's hit her stride. And the progressive parts of her that I knew before are coming out more. So I was very encouraged, and I was doing this piece before Biden blew the debate. So I had no idea. I mean, it was clearly—
As a journalist, it's the best time to be doing a profile of somebody who's about to.
It really is. Congratulations. It actually is. It's terrifying, but.
Mary Ritchie says, what about Julian Castro for VP? I love Julian Castro. I'm a big fan. Murray Smart asks, will Harris hammer home the threats from Project 2025? I think she will. I'm going to answer that one. She did a great speech the other day, actually laying out the case against Project 2025. Some of us said that's what Biden should be doing. Waleed, a lot of questions again about Gaza. How does she distance herself, if she wanted to, from the Biden legacy? Can she? There are some people saying it just needs to be a clean slate. She's as guilty as Biden for what happened, therefore we can't vote for them. I'm sure you're hearing that from friends of yours. What do you think? What are you going to say to people who say that? You're actually, you've got skin in the game. You're part of the uncommitted movement. What are you going to say?
She will be put in the spotlight in a way she has never been before on defending American policy in Gaza and in Israel, and she'll have to answer for why we're sending— instead of all the energy going to Biden, she will now have to answer for why we're still sending bombs for this horrific assault on Palestinian civilians. I think she needs to signal in some way that she's not okay with it publicly and not just in privately, or saying small things to Joan Walsh in her profile. Like I think there needs to be a sense of a policy direction that's shifted. It can't just be, I'm deeply disturbed, I'm deeply concerned. Like there needs to be some sort of policy change or speech or something. It's a very hard position for her to be in as the vice president to Biden. But, and I think of Harris as she is kind of the median Democratic senator from the post-Trump era, and Biden is the median Democratic senator from like the Reagan era. And I think that explains a lot of their views on some of this stuff. Like I am more optimistic today than I have been the last 6 months about Democrats' chances of winning in November, and also about some shift on Gaza, because she's from a different generation that thinks about a lot of things, from racism to sexism to the Republican Party to the economy and Israel and foreign policy, I think, differently than Biden does. And so it also is about some of my fear around Vice President Harris now being the nominee is that if she's out there representing the most left-wing version of Democratic Party politics on a national stage, like she needs to get kind of protested and pushed around by the actual left in order to say that I'm not, look, there's actually people to the left of me who I don't agree with. Like I'm kind of afraid she'll be positioned as this leftist from California, from San Francisco, and painted that way, rather than someone who's being like,
yeah, and on
that kind of thing.
And to go back to Joan's earlier points about rhetoric is so important. I don't expect her to come out with some major different policy view, certainly not before the election, before she's in the White House. But there's no harm. In fact, there's only benefit to going to somewhere like Michigan and giving a speech talking about the humanity of everyone in the Middle East, talking about what's happened, talking about, there's no cost to that. I don't understand why they don't do it, other than the fact that, people don't actually care about Palestine.
It would be an improvement from
total erasure.
Nothing that Biden has done.
Yes. Nina, key question. A lot of people asking this question. Is a country in which approximately 40% of the population is behind a white man who was twice impeached as a convicted felon, is that country ready for a black woman to be president?
Absolutely not. It's not. We can't delude ourselves. The vice president is going to have a heavy, heavy mountain to climb. We saw it in 2020 when she, just suspended her race. We know that Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm in the 1970s, first Black woman to attempt this. Black people weren't with her. The feminists weren't with her. Black men weren't with her. She was running totally against the entire system. Vice President Harris has an advantage in that she has the blessing of the current president. Now she has to wade through all of the racism, the sexism, the anti-Blackism that is the United States of America. Can we get this country ready? I do absolutely believe that. Can we get them ready in 4 months? And that really is my indictment on my own party. I am a member of the DNC. I served as a Democrat in every single office, but I am not a rollover type of Democrat. Why didn't we have robust primaries? Now we're putting the current vice president in a situation where she has got to try to be the savior. She is up for the job, but my God, how hard is that to try to do in less than 4 months? Because let us not forget, early voting will start in many states across this country. The country needs to get ready, but if I'm being honest about, are they ready? They're gonna have to be forced to be ready. Hell, they weren't ready for President Barack Hussein Obama, okay? They were not ready. We're gonna have to push them to get ready. And it shouldn't simply be about her being a Black woman or a woman of color. I'm not sure how the vice president identifies, so I'm not trying to.
She identifies as a Black woman.
But
I can say that.
I know that.
Which breaks my heart as the Indian on the panel here.
Well,
Indian.
she also talks about her mother all the time.
No, I don't think she doesn't. I know she doesn't say, her Indian roots are there, but I like to refer to people. I call her a Black woman, but I want to be very clear. I know that President Barack Obama says he's a Black man, even though he has a
I said to my two daughters today that you may have a South Indian woman making dosas and idlis in the White House next year. We'll see. Let me just say that, by the way, that question was from Adam Mincino. I should say people's names we're out of time almost. I do want to wrap up by asking an important forward-looking question. By the way, you mentioned, Nina, about the country being ready. I should just point out to everyone, Hillary Clinton won in 2016. She got 3 million more votes than Donald Trump. The Electoral College screwed her. the reality is more Americans voted for a woman than a man in 2016. So I think we've actually already crossed that issue. It's just an issue of those bloody swing states. Let me end by throwing forward my own question to all of you, which is, come January 2025, let's say she has won, right? Let's say she's won. Donald Trump won't accept the result. Let's say, touch wood, there's not an insurrection. A President Harris enters the White House, hugely divided country, probably even angrier on the right than they were in 2021. What does she do? What would you, if you're advising on, what's the first thing? What should she be focused on? Waleed, go first.
I think the backlog of things in Build Back Better that weren't passed in the first term, I think she's got to complete that. And then the second one is all these democracy reform pieces that make it easy, balance the democracy in our country that's tilting toward Republicans, whether it's voting rights, gerrymandering, and a whole range of other issues, labor rights to make it easier for people to organize. There's a whole backlog of things that Democrats have been waiting 5, 10, 15 years to get past, that on both Build Back Better and democracy reform, those would be the things I focused on.
Joan?
I mean, part of what you're asking is, does she come in with a House majority and a Senate majority? Because then she can do Build Back Better, she can do democracy reform, she can do a lot of stuff. God forbid she comes in and she also has, a Republican House or Senate. I don't know what the hell she can do, except the avatar of democracy and women's rights and labor rights. And I just want to remind people, she is the chair of the White House task force on labor rights and worker organizing. And, she's been an incredible advocate for labor. So,
and this administration, as badly as it's done on Gaza, has done well on domestic issues like labor, for sure.
Absolutely. And she's been in the forefront.
Nina, oh, by the way, before I go to Nina for a last word for the panel, I would point out, I always say this, I have to keep saying this, she's the current Vice President of the United States. According to the Republican Party, she can just decide who's president on January 6th, 2025 They gave her that power.
I forgot. I don't know why I didn't say that.
Just a reminder, Kamala Harris could just make herself president even if she loses in November. Republicans, your theory, not mine. Nina, last word to you from the panel.
Yeah, the National Labor Relations Board has been kicked, but definitely compliments to the Biden administration for that. Would love to see the future president, hopefully Vice President Harris, to build on that. Mehdi, I'm thinking about James Baldwin. He said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. So it's not only the policy proposition that President Harris would have to deal with, it is also whether the Democrats control the House, the Senate, or one or the other, or none. It is using the bully pulpit in a way that edifies and lifts. If she does not control, if she wins and she does not control either house or only one of them, she needs the executive order her heart out. But travel this country and use the bully pulpit. There is always more than one way to skin a cat. And when you are the president of the United States of America, you ought to use that enormous power that you have for a whole lot of good.
And when it comes to executive orders, she could just wave Project 2025 and said, you said I have the power. You said it. Right. I'm going to give the last word actually to a subscriber. Mary Ritchie says, we have to put our backs into it, no matter who runs. I'm a San Franciscan. I've always thought she was too conservative for me, but I'll bust my ass for her, says Mary Ritchie. We'll leave it on that note. Thank you all Zeteo subscribers for signing up. Tell your friends to sign up so they can come as paid subscribers and join conversations like this on historic days like this one. As someone said on Twitter recently, now I know what it's like to live through history because we're doing it. Thank you to Nina Turner, Joan Walsh, Waleed Shahid on a Sunday night. Appreciate you all. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.